Hi, so we'll be starting with lesson number 18. Your compliance is related to environmental laws, okay, and the provisions applicable for setting up the businesses. Now, when I talk about environment and environmental laws, it was earlier a very ignored topic and something which was not given much weightage. But with the changing times, with the amount of climatic conditions and the awareness that has been built up by scientists and by us by viewing our environment altogether, we have realized that climate change is real and it is a very real threat to all of us today. Laws in India are very serious about tackling climate change and ensuring that we do not damage the environment, especially the businesses where some amount of emissions will always be there. So we need to strike a balance in between where we ensure that there is progress, there is industrialization, there is growth, but at the same time with lesser amount of damage. More renewable energy is used, much more sustainable methods of growth are incorporated. We will see today what are the environmental laws in India and what are we doing. Just before we start, let me tell you about something about climate change and how important today climate change and taking these laws seriously are. The government realizes this and they are levying heavy penalties, to the extent even there are penalties of 100 crores by the pollution control board on certain emitting companies, entities. They are very frequently putting penalties of 1 crore, 5 crores, 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs. We will see the fines that have been increased with the awareness that is coming in. So let me take you through some stats before we start. One of the stats is about how much is climate change going to affect us, okay, and who are the countries who will be affected. Firstly, if I just take you through the world map, this is prepared by the environmentalist, okay, and this is what it looks like. Tell me one thing, is every single country going to be negatively impacted by climate change? Yes or no? Is every single country going to be negatively impacted? Answer is no. There are certain countries which will benefit from climate change, which is countries such as certain parts of United States, Canada and Russia. These are your extremely cold countries which were earlier inhabitable, with increase in temperatures will become more habitable. However, there are countries most at risk. Most of them are from China and from Asia. If you go to see what is our risk factor, this is the countries least at risk, that is Canada, USA and Australia. That's one of the reasons why people are opting to migrate to these countries. If I go to see which are the most at risk, one of the most at risk is our neighboring country, that is Bangladesh, which they believe in the next century might not even exist, and we will have a huge amount of climate refugees that would be looking to relocate due to the inhabitable conditions that their region has become. Then we also have UAE, which will go into soaring temperatures. India is also a country which is at moderate risk. If we go to see how much loss will be there, this is the stats made by environmentalists, where they say that climate change could cut the economic growth by $23 trillion in 2050. If you want to know how big is 23 trillion, let me tell you that the GDP of India today in 2021 is 3 trillion. The biggest country with the biggest economy is USA, which is approximately $21 trillion. So we are going to have a loss caused by climate change, which would be more than the biggest countries of the world today. Okay, so there are many people who are raising awareness, and today we have a topic which is about environmental laws. We will be handling companies and we have to ensure that these laws are followed. We should not only follow it in true letters but also in spirit. When I say in letters means what? Doing the bare minimum to stay outside the penalties of the government. However, companies today, entrepreneurs today have realized and do something more than what the law says. For example, we have entrepreneurs who are taking leaps and bounds to bring about a completely different method of doing business. Sustainable methods. We have, that is going on. If I just take you through, the most pioneer you could say is Elon Musk with his electric car vehicles that is coming in. There is something called as a new mode of transportation which I could take you through, Hyperloop. I don't know whether you know about it, but it is going to be one of the futures of transportation which is in a manner which will be environmental friendly. Then we also have electric car vehicles. Okay, electric vehicles. Obviously, I could take for USA. We know the biggest one is Tesla, but in India we have Tatas, we have Mahindras. They have all tried to develop such sustainable methods of doing business. Any other methods that there are huge amount of funds and benefits given by the government to businesses which are incorporating renewable energy. So we have so many businesses which are into different methods of generation of power. You have your Adani Power, you have your Adani Greens, which is also growing up. Think Adani Green Share, okay. So these are all companies which, if you see, it has just picked up. So there is huge amount of recognition and monetary benefits given by government to encourage sustainable methods of doing business. So we will see that this topic is not only important just like any other law, but this also has an impact on you and me, and therefore we have to ensure that we follow the best practices which are available in the industry today. When we go to the chapter and how do they start off, is the work had started from many years back, where we have started recognizing that climate change and environment have a very, very important role in our lives and our lifestyles. Here, as per our article, now these are something, now obviously we've understood the philosophical, or you could say the theoretical part, but now we need some concrete things to put in our papers. Okay, when we write our papers, we require some concrete stuff, which I will give you with not only the article number, the section numbers, but also the cases that you can quote in your exam. So your paper, when you will be writing, should not only be your law, but also case laws. Okay, and there will be plenty. So you need to have a book and pen. Whenever I come through certain acts and certain aspects, I will tell you certain real life cases which you can quote in your exams. Firstly, the most important which you need to quote in your exam is your article number 48A of the Indian Constitution, which talks about the directive principles of state policy. Now, what does directive principles of state policy means? It means that the state should direct its policies towards certain things. Okay, so the state policy should be directed to achieve certain things. Now, what is that? We will see. The Article 48A states that enjoins the state to endeavor, that is try to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. If you go to see the states, now we haven't seen those kind of issues in India, but globally there is a concept, or you could say there is something which is going on due to climate change, which is your forest fires. One of the recent and one of the worst forest fires was anyone knows which one it is? Australian forest fire, where around 10 million hectares of land burned and over 1 billion animals died. Okay, so this was in 2020, 1920. This was just recently, where you had 1 billion animals that were burnt due to forest fires. Okay, koalas, etc. Even I think there are in USA and Canada also there are current forest fires that are there. Okay, so what is Article 48A stating? Article 48A is stating that the state means the government, should direct its policy for what? To protect and improve the environment, and second, to safeguard the forest and the wildlife. Okay. Even there was one forest fire in the Amazon, which many people believed it was done by certain companies. Amazon forest fires. So this was also recently only in 2020. More than 2,500 major fires burnt across the Brazilian Amazon. Okay, hectares burnt, 2 million. Now, historic rainforest fire threatens climate change. Now, this was one of the biggest rainforest which was there, which used to have a certain amount of oxygen, which will not be there anymore. So the number of fires burning Amazon increased by 28%. Okay, so so this is a real threat that is there to all of us, and we need to quote these in the exam. What do you need to quote? You need to quote your Article 48A, that it is the duty of the state to ensure that you protect the environment and the forest and wildlife. Okay, this article was inserted by the 42nd Amendment in the year January 1977. So this has to be quoted in your examination. Okay, moving forward, apart from this, now there's one more article that you need to quote, your Article 51AG. Now tell me one thing, Article 48A posed a kind of a duty on whom? The duty was on whom? Can you tell me? The duty was on the state, that is a government. Now Article 51A is saying that it is a duty of every citizen. Now the duty is also of the citizens of India, like you and me, citizens of India, to protect and improve the natural environment, including the forest, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for all living creatures. In addition, our association with the international charters to support a fortified environment regulation in India. Okay, so it is a duty of every citizen also to protect forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and have compassion towards living creatures. So these two articles is something that you need to quote mandatorily in your exam as far as possible. So these are two articles of the Constitution. So you have your Constitution, article number 51A and your Article 48A. I want you to write it down and ensure that you quote it as far as possible in your exam. Now this is the duty of the state and this is the duty of the citizen to protect the environment. Now we're going to see, pursuant to the Constitution, our governments have introduced and have brought in certain acts. Okay, we'll see which are the acts and laws in India, because mere concept is not going to protect your environment. You need to have laws, rules, regulations, and consequences for violation of the rules to ensure that the environment is fairly protected. Now, environmental regulations in India, a bird's eye view. We will be seeing few of them. Now, under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, okay, so there are many international bodies. That is, one of it is your Universal Declaration of Human Rights, has given recognition to right to healthy environment as a human right. So you can quote it, that it is a human right, means it is my right to demand, to expect a healthy environment. So if anything is violating the environment, it is believed that it is going to violate my personal human right. Okay, so we are going to see the few laws which are there in India. It's summarized below here. Okay, so these are your major laws in India, environmental laws in India. So firstly, if you go to see this, these have been placed in order of their enactment. That is, the earliest one is 1974, then 1977, then 1981, 86, 1991, then 2002, 2010, and this they put it in. This is the rules. Okay, put it up in the end. These are all the acts in order. The very first one which was introduced was your Water Act, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. This also brought in a cess. A cess is what? What do you mean by a cess? A cess is a tax for a specific purpose. That means if I tell you water cess, means this tax is collected only for management of water management or prevention and control. So the purpose will be fixed. If I tell you cess like Swachh Bharat cess, so this cess will be used to make the India swachh and clean. Okay, so this was their water prevention and control. Along with that, there is a cess. So this you could put it down under one head, water. The environment also consists with the air. So after this, then they also made the Air Pollution Act, which we will see. Then they said that it's not only about air and water, it is about land, it is about animals, forest, everything, biodiversity. So then they also brought in additional points, which is the Environmental Act as a whole, environmental laws as a whole. Then you have your Public Liability Insurance Act. You have your Biodiversity Act also, but I'm just going to highlight the important ones. And then you have your National Green Tribunals Act. So these, you could say, 5 acts are important for you and constitute your major environmental laws in India. It constitutes your major environmental laws in India. I hope this is clear. Laws in India. Even if you do your LLB, you have a subject called as environmental laws, and these are the laws that come. These are the 5 ones which are important. So we will be seeing each one and a basic overview of what it contains. Now you have your Water Prevention and Control Act 1974. Now once you write this, you will write a basic about it. You will write the object of the act. So this is given as the object of the act. What is the object or purpose of the act? Okay, so we will see. And then they give you the few provisions about it. They'll give you a few provisions about the act. And additionally, it is not given in your module, but I would suggest you do that. You will also quote a case study. You will quote a case study. I will give you the case study, a very famous landmark case study which you can quote in your examination. So your answer could be, if they ask you Water Prevention and Control Act, you will write the object of the act, you will write the provisions, and then you will quote a case study under the act. Okay. Let's see. What is the object of the act? Purpose of the Water Prevention and Control. So from the name itself, you can break it down. The objective is to prevent and control water pollution? Yes or no? From the name itself, it is to prevent and control water pollution. That's the first part. Okay, that's one part of the objects. If you see, it is enacted to prevent and control water pollution. That's one part. Second, in order to prevent it, we have to ensure that the water remains pure, unadulterated. That is called as to maintain and restore wholesomeness of water. That's the second condition, the second object, you could say. The third, the object is 3. The third one, you tell me, just by saying that prevent water pollution, maintain the wholesomeness of water, you think it will happen? This is a pure paper. It's paper. To make it a living document which is enforced, you need to have certain regulators, you need to have certain officers, you need to have certain boards which will administer, which will ensure that these laws are followed. So then comes the third part, the third object of the act. That is, it further provides for establishment of boards. So these boards could be central boards and state boards. The central board will function at the central level and the state board will function at the state level. The state boards will coordinate and report to the central board. Okay. So these boards, what do? What do these central boards do? They have officers. They have certain people who will raid your factory. They will raid your industry. They will see, they will take samples whether you have followed the law or no. They will see how much emissions are you doing. So those ensure that the laws are followed. So this governance part is done by the boards. Okay. Without these boards, nobody is going to take the law, because law will be a mere it is a mere paper. To make it a living document, you need these officers or these boards which will ensure the implementation of the law. Moving forward, what did I tell you that what do these boards do? It prohibits discharge of pollutants into the waters beyond the given standard, and there are penalties for non-compliance. At the central level, you have central pollution control boards. Okay. And at the state level, you have your state pollution control boards. So again, how many boards are there? So you have your central board and you have your state board. Okay. Now, to do this, to ensure that the laws are followed and you have certain standards prescribed that emissions can be done only up till this limit. Beyond that, it is considered like how we have for vehicles, PUC, pollution. Okay, you have your PUC done, pollution under control. So what happens? They say emissions can be done, but up till a limit. If it's too much, then they will do some remedial measures. Same way, industries and factories can also emit up till a certain limit. Now, government needs funds. Whenever you see government, in order to pay the officers, in order to do research, R&D, require money. So how do the government raise the money? They have made something called as a water cess. What have they done? Levy of water cess. Do you pay water cess? Do you pay water cess? Answer is yes. Go and check in your building. Go and check in your house. What happens? The building or the society pays a water bill. In the water bill, there is something called as water cess. That water cess is used to further the objects. Okay. Provide for collection of water cess consumed by person operating and carrying certain persons of industrial activities. Okay. The cess is collected. So as we use and we pay, even industries have to pay certain water cess for the water that they use. This cess is collected with the view. What is the view? To augment, that is to gather the resources. That's the money. Augment means gather the resources for central and the state boards and ensure that they do it. Now, what does the act do? So the act necessitates, that is mandates, to provide information to the State Pollution Control Board. Now let's understand, it's it's a common sense. What would the state boards do? How would I ensure? So let's say this is the government. Okay. And these are all these companies out here. These are all the companies which are operating in India today. What do I do to have a supervision over them? Okay, and to ensure that they follow the environmental laws. What do I do? That's what is given in the law. Firstly, we tell them that you need to provide us regular information. Provide us information. The what sort of information they will prescribe in the act. For example, an accident report. An example of information that you have to provide is an accident report. If in your factory there is a leakage or there was an environmental incident, you need to report it to the government. You will have to provide them access for taking samples. Okay, so the government has a right to come to your premise. They will come, take certain samples, send them to certain environmental labs. They will send them to environmental labs for testing whether these samples are up to the limit, or you're emitting and discharging trade effluents beyond the limits. Okay, samples. Allow entry. Now obviously if someone has come to check the sample, can you deny the entry to the officer, or you have to allow the entry to the officer? Obviously you have to allow entry to the State Pollution Control Board and their officers when they come in to collect your samples. Okay, so periodic informations, they can also come in, collect samples if they get information, etc. Now what is the responsibility of the persons? So these are the responsibilities of all these companies and company secretaries, because this is ultimately a law. And if I am working in if I am the company secretary of a hazardous entity, I will be very, very cautious about the environmental laws. Okay, let's say I am working in can you tell me a few hazardous industries? Chemical company, Tata Chemicals. Now I know it is a possibility that there might be a leakage, there might be something, or I am working in Reliance Power. There could be explosions, etc. So as a company secretary, this will be my responsibilities. I have to obtain consent to establish the business. So there are certain environmental clearances, environmental licenses that I need to obtain. Only then I can set up the business. I have to consent to establish, consent to operate. To operate as well. Okay, apply for renewal before the validity period. So if certain validity periods are there, I have to keep applying for the renewal aspect. Consent to be deemed as granted as automatically and unconditionally after 4 months from the date of the application. Refusal of consent, pay the water cess on time. So these are some points which you can choose. Okay, provide access, affix water meters, pay interest in case there is a delay, pay penalty in case of non-payment of cess. Industry is entitled with 25% rebate if certain conditions are met. So companies which are following the laws get a certain benefits. Now, so few points you can pick it up from there. Now coming to the checklist. What is the checklist? And it's very simple. And if you notice, the checklist is very similar to what is there in the Air Act, Water Act, Environmental Act. Okay, what could be the checklist? Checklist means what? I need to check whether these things are there as a company secretary. So I will check whether the company has got any directions from the state board or any of the officers. Okay, in relation to the flow or the volume of the stream or the well, or the discharging the sewage trade effluent into any such stream or well, and to give such information as to the abstraction and discharge at times. Okay, so obviously sometimes companies get certain notices from the board. I'll give you a very recent, weird example. What happened is there was a dye company. Okay, a dye company. What happened is they were emitting dyes into the water, because of which the animals used to go in for a dip and used to come in on different dyes. So I'll just show you. So this was thing. Can you see? So this was in the water. So due to there were certain companies, okay, which was putting the industrial waste for into the water, and these dogs and animals used to go inside. So the group of strangely colored canines were spotted on 11th August, and which was sent, a complaint was sent to the pollution control board. So there were all different colors, like how you have gems. So like those different animals were found, green, pink, etc. Now it seems funny, but it caused a lot of irritation to the animals, and they were not very much welcomed at their homes. So authorities in India have shut down a manufacturing company after it was accused of dumping untreated industrial waste and dyes into the local river, resulted in 11 dogs turning blue. So you imagine the loss caused to the particular company, where they had to shut down the entire plant. Okay, so you have to see whether you've got any directions, etc. Otherwise, your business could be shut down completely. Next, whether any company has complied with any directions, etc. of the officers. You have to see whether you have complied with the directions. The state board or any of the officers authorized have taken any samples of the water, okay, that you're putting into the stream, samples of sewage waste. Now, persons authorized by the state board have a right to inspect the premises, okay, and the company should provide all the necessary assistance to them so that they can take the proper samples. Now, prior consent of the state board is to be taken, okay, if you want to alter the outlet or set up a new outlet or want to discharge some new kind of sewage. Okay, you also have to check if any notice has been received by the company from any state board for not taking consent, or you are discharging any poisonous or polluting matter into the stream. Okay, the company has received any order restraining the company from polluting the stream. The company has received any directions in writing for closure, prohibition, this. Okay, so these are some of the checklists that you need to see as a company secretary. Now we'll see some important case law which you can quote it in your exam proactively. It's not there in your module, but it's a landmark judgment of the Supreme Court which has changed things in India. It is your famous MC Mehta versus Union of India, your Ganga water purification case, or your leather tanneries case. Okay, so this is something which you have to proactively quote in your exam with the heading Ganga River case study. This Ganga River case study was brought down in the case of MC Mehta versus Union of India. MC Mehta was an industrialist. He had filed a public interest litigation against the government, stating that the municipal corporation has allowed the emissions and the industrial waste to be sent into the Ganga water directly. This has caused huge amount of water pollution. It made the water not only harmful for the humans but also for animals and aquatic animals. So the landmark judgment was that the Supreme Court asked all the tanneries, leather tanneries and businesses around Ganga to relocate into another remote area. Second, they said that no industrial waste can be let out into the waters without being treated. So first, every companies today and industries have to have a treatment plant. They convert the toxic waste into non-toxic, and only then they can emit it into any water, land, etc. Because even the industries have to emit or send out the industrial waste, so they have to first make it non-toxic and then do that. Okay, so you can take down the name of the case and then maybe Google it up and find a small little briefing where you can do that. Okay, the fact is the Ganga is a holy river in India. I had been there as well in Uttarakhand. It is currently, the state is it's very, very good, pure and clean. Okay, because of so many laws that were there and so much regulation, and the people there also protecting the waters. Okay, so there were certain leather tanneries, but the leather tanneries was saying that we don't have any other option, and second, if we are asked to relocate, it will cause huge amount of unemployment and loss to the state government. However, the Supreme Court stated that the monetary consideration should not be an aspect when it comes to environment. Okay, and stated to stop the water pollution. Okay, the tanneries and milk the milk dairies were shifted outside the city, and many urinals and public latrines were made around the Ganga water so that it's not polluted. I hope this is clear. So your water purification case, so when it comes to your Water Act, you can quote a case called as Ganga Water Purification Case. Okay, it is of MC Mehta versus Union of India. So you need to Google it up, make in a few lines and something, and then quote it in your examination. Moving ahead, the next act we'll be seeing is your Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Now the object of the act is very, very simple. From the name itself is to prevent and control air pollution. That's the first part. So it is to prevent, control and abet, that is prevent only your air pollution. And second is for establishments of board. Second is for establishments of board. That is your central board and state boards. These will enforce and implement the laws in India. So these boards will have officers, and these officers will have inspection and will ensure that the environmental laws are followed. Okay, then they would come, these officers as general. What would these do? They have certain air labs. These air labs would check the quality of the air by the chimneys, and we have certain pollution control equipments. Now what are pollution control equipments? Like your chimneys. So they would come and inspect those chimneys. They would see whether you have pollution control equipments. They see where they are emitting, okay, and so on. So they will check the air quality. So sometimes in Delhi, the air quality is extremely bad, where it was considered to be one of the worst in the world. Okay, so even nowadays on signals you must have seen that the air quality is stated whether it is bad, good, etc. Okay, so the Air Act seeks to combat air pollution by prohibiting the use of certain polluting fuels. So we have coal. So we are trying to switch to much more renewable energies which do not damage. If you go to see your diesel cars, so government of India does, since diesel pollutes a lot more you have certain CNG etc. is being promoted now. Now again, what is the statutes ask you to comply? It's very well similar to the Water Act. Comply with the conditions in the consent to establish. So you have to take consent to establish, consent to operate. Do not discharge air pollution in excess of the limits. Furnish information on regular periodical basis. Allow entry to the officers when they want to come in. You have to provide them information to enable implementation of the act. Enable them to take samples. They would, after taking the samples, realize that you might have increased the made some discharge etc. So they will issue you directions. You have to comply with those directions. Obtain consent to establish, operate, as we saw. You have to apply for renewal before the expiry of the period. So these are all basic stuff. Okay. Now what are the checklist here? Checklist, if I am the company secretary of a company, okay, on which the environmental laws are very much essential to be followed, I would check these things. Whether the company has established any industrial plant in any pollution control area. Now what is a pollution control area? So here there are certain ecologically sensitive areas, coastal regulation zones. So that time the government of India is very strict with respect to the air quality. So I'll give you a case law which you can quote it in your exam for your pollution control area. Okay, that is your Dehradun or the Doon Valley case. Now what happened in this case, like let's say in this pollution control area, so this was the Sahadri mountains, okay, and here you have it was a valley, the Doon Valley, Dehradun Valley. What happened is certain companies went inside and started blasting mines. Now this is a ecologically sensitive area where it did not allow so much air pollution, did not allow noise pollution, because it would affect the the animals living there, since these are quiet zones. So what happened is, so preservation, let's see. So what was this? In 1983, the court prohibited blasting operations. It was reviewing to determine whether these mines were being operated in compliance with the safety measures. The committee, they appointed a committee, and in 1987, after the review of the report, it was based on ecological considerations that the mining in the valley should cease. So it was asked complete ceasing of the activities of blasting mines. Okay, so you can go ahead behind that also. So these were very destructive to the environment, and it had caused huge amount of losses of butterflies, okay, which were there, which could not withstand the sound and the noise, etc. Okay, so you can go ahead with the Dehradun Valley case just to explain that in short. Not that important, but if you want, you can just quote for a reference. So you would go and check whether you're setting up in a pollution control area. Now company has made an application for consent. So I'll check whether the company has made an application for consent in the prescribed form with the prescribed fees, etc. You've got the consent to operate. Okay. Whether you've complied with the following conditions in the consent by the state board. So whether you've installed any pollution control equipment. So there are certain chimneys or other equipments also for pollution control. alteration of any existing equipment, you need to inform the government. Keep the control equipment in good condition. Erection or re-erection of any chimney. So all of this you need to take the consent of the government, and such are the conditions that they may specify. The company has got an order from any court restraining the company from causing or permitting any emissions of air pollutants. So you have to see whether you have got any order, which I will give you a case also for air pollution as well. We'll see. The company has received any direction from the state board for supply of any information, or whether any person authorized has a right to, is on behalf, has inspected the premises and we provided the correct information. A state board or officer empowered in it has taken any samples, and the company is discharging any air pollutants in excess of the limits stated. So I need to check all these things to be in compliance with the environmental laws. Now I'll give you a case law for your, now this is all that they've spoken about the Air Act. Now when you're talking of your Air Act, the case law that you can quote, it's a landmark case. You write it down, you need to Google search, make a small little synopsis of it and then quote it, which is your Taj Mahal case. Taj Mahal case. Okay, so what happened is there were certain industries surrounding the Taj which had certain chimneys, and because of that there was a lot of air pollution. This air used to mix with the air, used to mix with the water and come in the form of acid rain. There was a problem of acid rain. Okay, I believe you must be knowing a history of the Taj Mahal case, where they were planning to remove it from the 7 wonders of the world. Okay, so that happened where the marbles were becoming yellow. So in such cases, the Supreme Court, again the case filed was by the environmentalist called MC Mehta, was the same guy who had filed the Ganga water purification case, also filed the Taj trapezium case called the MC Mehta versus Union of India, saying that this is action of allowing industries around the Taj to, allow emissions which is causing Taj Mahal, which might bring disrepute to India. So what was the final judgment? That these industries were asked to relocate. So again you can quote that. So this was the Taj Mahal case. Okay, it lies between MC Mehta versus Union of India, popularly called as the Taj trapezium case. Again a writ petition was filed by MC Mehta. Background of the case is considered as one of the best structures. It is declared as UNESCO World Heritage. He filed, was a public interest litigant who visited the Taj Mahal in 1984. He found that the marbles were becoming yellow due to the widespread industries monument. Then the Supreme Court said that the Taj was moving towards its destruction and damage. Such duration was well recognized and acknowledged by the court, and such damage was not only by the traditional causes but also due to these reasons. Different experts submitted reports stating that the air pollutants generated from the industries had a harmful effect on the marble and pollution needs to be reduced. So the period between the closure of the industries, they were asked to relocate. So you can quote this case as well. Going next to your Environmental Protection Act. Now, Environmental Protection Act was an act in 1986 which spoke about improving the environmental as a whole, not only specifically to water, air, but also land, noise, forest, everything. Okay, so to protect and improve the environmental as a whole. Okay, it established a framework. So they had what did this act do? It set up air labs, water labs. It set up for taking samples, methods. They have set up certain CES, certain audit report. A very important audit report needs to be taken, which we will see. Environmental audit report needs to be taken, which was one of the very, very important aspects here. In that, what happened? Now imagine if the laws are followed or not followed, how can we ensure that? So they started in the Environment Protection Act, they said that why don't you only report to us and have a auditor appointed to see whether you followed with the laws or no. So this will be a much more enhancement to ensure that the laws are followed. Okay. So we'll come to that. They defined what do you mean by environment. So this was environment was understood in a wider term. It said it includes the air, water, okay, land, human beings, creatures, etc. Under the environmental law, the central government is empowered to take necessary measures to improve the quality of the environment, etc. Now, similar thing, company with the directions issued by the central government may include closure of the industry, stoppage of the activities, prevent certain discharge or emissions beyond a certain standards, furnish information of any accident reports, allow entry, take samples, submit an environmental statement every year. So this is important, which is, wasn't there earlier in the earlier acts, where they said that every year provide an environmental statement, which we will see now. It's the audit report. Obtain a environmental clearances from the Ministry of Environmental and Forest in case of new forest modernization, etc. So environmental clearances. Now let's see your checklist under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. Now similar points, you as a company secretary have to check whether you have received any direction, okay, whether the company has complied with the direction, whether you are emitting in excess of the standards provided, whether the officers have taken any samples, okay, any person empowered has carried out any inspection and any direction has been given, then the company has complied with the safeguard measures for handling of hazardous substances. So again, we are seeing that again same points are being repeated, that you have to communicate, you have to see whether directions have been given. Directions will only be given after samples have been taken and investigation has been done, and then it is being reported, okay, and then they will give you direction which you need to follow. Again, in discharge of any environmental pollution in excess of the prescribed standards, the company has given intimation to all the following authorities. So in case at any time when you have exceeded the prescribed standards, you need to inform the officers in charge, the state board, central board, the authorities, etc., that you have exceeded the limit. Now obviously it is a law, so you have to inform. A most important part here is the company has submitted an environmental audit report in the financial year ending 31st March in Form 5 to the concerned board on or before the 30th of September. This is the most important, that you need to give an environmental audit report, whether all the laws have been followed or no, okay, with respect to this act. And this has to be given from the ending of the financial year. So moment the financial year ends, by the 30th September, you need to make this filing in Form 5. Okay, this is important. Then coming to your next act, which is your Public Liability Insurance Act. Now, what is your Public Liability Insurance Act? Very, very, very important act. Okay, you can expect this for 5 marks to come in your exams. Okay, so let's understand. You tell me, if today there is any kind of calamity, hazardous, or there is a leakage, is it only the employees who get affected, or it is even the villagers, even the outsiders who get affected? What do you think? In case of any kind of breakdown or any kind of explosion, only the employees suffer or even the people surrounding the factory suffer? What do you think?
Society also suffers.
Society also suffers. So here you have the public at general also at risk. So whenever you're dealing, first of all, in hazardous substances, this act applies to hazardous substances only. It applies only to hazardous substances. Okay, where they are saying that if you're dealing into hazardous substances, you get normally a insurance is done of employees, yes or no? Normally insurance is done of employees, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, but here you also have to go ahead when you're dealing in hazardous substances. You not only have to take off employees, but of the public at large, So that means when was this brought in, where you had certain leaks. So there was one case law which is not given here, but you can quote it. It is your
Opal Gas Tragedy.
Bhopal Gas Tragedy. Very good. Okay, so there were multiple leaks, and one you could quote it as Bhopal Gas Tragedy. In that, the government realized that whenever there are these leaks, Bhopal Gas Tragedy, then later on they also had this oleum gas leak. Now when that happened, it's not only the employees who suffered but also the people around. Now when these people around let's say fell ill, some died, there were disablement. Now what they would do? They would file a case in court against the company, yes or no? So they would file the case on the company. Now what happened? These companies used to say that we don't have so much money only, and they should declare, what do they declare? Bankruptcy. So ultimately you think the public got their stake of money? No. So public ultimately would face in a case of a situation that, boss, the loss is so big that the company itself cannot pay everyone, the public at large. So then they thought, why not get an insurance done already? So isn't the risk shared then? You have not only the company who has to pay, but also the insurance company that will pay. So what happens, just like you get an employee insurance, where if there is a loss to the employee, the insurance company will pay. Same way you have to get a public insurance done for companies dealing in hazardous substances. So what would happen exactly, I'll explain. So let's say there is a company dealing in hazardous substance. Can you all just think and tell me a company that is dealing in hazardous substances? Okay, till that I'll just draw this. Till that I'll think and tell me a company which is dealing in hazardous substances. So a company and will have to, when they are doing the business only, setting up the business, they know they are dealing in hazardous substance. They are dealing in a hazardous substance. So as per the PLI Act, Public Liability Insurance Act, if they are dealing, they already before starting only have to contact an insurance company. They have to contact a insurance company. The company has to pay regular insurance premium. Insurance premium. In return, the insurance company will protect someone. Who is that someone? Who is the beneficiary here? Can you tell me the
employees?
That's not the employee, no? Because the employees already have employee insurance. This is whom? Which insurance are we getting?
Villagers.
So they call it as public. Beneficiaries, public at large. It could be anyone. It could be a villager, non-villager, a stander by, a person walking by, and he got injured with the explosion. So the insurance company will pay the public who has come. Understood till here? The concept. So there is a company, let's say, is dealing into firecrackers, etc. Okay. So there are these companies, let's say. So firecracker company. Can you see all this? 3 killed in an explosion in a illegal factory firecracker, 5 injured in a series of explosions in a fire factory, explosion at the fire factory in Tamil Nadu. Can you see all of this? Now all these explosions are there. It's not necessary that only the factory workers die. It is the people surrounding also who might die. So in such cases, and recently remember very important Beirut explosion. Have you all seen that Beirut explosion?
In Lebanon.
In Lebanon. See how bad things can get, okay? Now see the kind of explosion that is.
Video from the day of the blast, you can see white flashes, what appear to be fireworks, going off before the massive explosion.
Now the point is same thing what happened in Beirut, Lebanon, same thing happened in our Indian case also, which was your Bhopal Gas Tragedy. So the name of the parent company said that we don't have so much money only to give. So then they said might as well get a insurance done for all hazardous companies. Doesn't the concept make sense? Doesn't the concept make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So on the night of December 2nd, so this again you can quote it in your exam whenever you're writing it. So methyl isocyanate split out from the Union Carbide Corporation. So it's the name of the company where the explosion happened. It was dealing in methyl isocyanate. It was a pesticide factory in Bhopal. It was India's first major industrial disaster. At 30 tons of methyl isocyanate gas killed in how many people?
15,000.
15,000 people. Okay, the Bhopal Gas Tragedy is the worst industrial disaster. Warning bell was there, so you can read it up. So there was a mini explosion before that, but people did not take much this, and then they had a bigger leak. Government's response and so on. So again, coming back to the point, so after this there was another. Okay, so just tell me in which year was this explosion done?
1984.
1984. Now just see what happened exactly, and just see the year also. The 1984 2nd December. Now see what happened exactly 1 year after that. Which was that other tragedy? Anyone knows? Oleum gas leak.
Istanbul nuclear power plant.
Okay, you're saying of another one.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. So I'll just check that also, but just see that exactly 1 year later there was another major leak, because that time still laws were not made that strongly. Even after the Bhopal gas tragedy, there came another incident called as oleum gas leak. Exactly after 1 year, were affected after 1 year of Bhopal gas tragedy was closely monitored, and it was by Shriram Food Fertilizers case, and it was a much more damaging thing in the center, and this was in the center of the population of around 2 lakh people. Shriram Food Fertilizers was set up. Now the 30,000 crore, they died of oleum inhalation. Now see, when it was around in next year only, and there was this landmark issues there. the judgment. So ultimately these two cases you can quote, okay, Bhopal Gas Tragedy and as well as the exactly. So this was in 1984, and exactly after 1 year you had another one called as Bhopal Gas Tragedy. So after these two major ones, 1984 and 1985, then they started realizing that these kind of explosions not only affect the employees but also the people around. So then just after few years, can you see the act when it was made? So they took time to set up the committee and all of that, and an act was passed called as PLI Act, Public Liability Insurance Act. Are we clear with this? You got the background of why this act was made? Now, in this, what did they say? That to save the owner of hazardous from hefty penalties. So it is also to protect the employee. Why do we take insurance? So that the owner doesn't end up business shut down due to non-payment, and at the same time the victim also gets the money. This is done by providing a compulsory insurance for third party liability. It is called as a public liability. I hope the concept is clear now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for first time owner is on the anvil to provide compensation or relief. So are the first primary liabilities of the owner. Okay, when there is a death or injury, actually the owner shall buy one or more insurance policy before he starts handling in any hazardous substance. So tell me, this insurance has to be done before you start the business or after you start the business?
Before.
So it will be done before you start the business. And what is the salient features of the act? Is that the owner should provide, the owner would get an insurance done, and so that you can provide relief to any person who has been affected with any kind of incident. Owner to draw insurance policy more than the paid up capital but less than 50 crores. So certain amount of insurance policy needs to be done as per the act. Paid up capital is there. Owner to pay additional amount as a contribution to environmental relief fund. Owner, so we know that so many businesses, they also have to provide certain contribution. Now these are all those who are dealing in hazardous substances. Owner to provide information related, and then all the same points will be there. You have to allow entry, they will inspect the premises, they will provide compensation, etc. Comply with the directions. As we've seen continuously in all the acts, they have said that there will be a board. That board will have officers, and the officers will come and inspect. They will collect samples, and whenever they find anything wrong, they can issue you certain directions. These directions could be to regulate the affairs, to prohibit certain affairs, or complete stoppage of the activity. Then coming to the next one. So whenever you're writing your Public Liability Insurance Act, you have to quote the background why this act was brought in, which is your Bhopal Gas Tragedy and your oleum gas leak. Those two cases you need to Google search, make a small little summary, and then write it. I've explained you the background. Now coming to your National Green Tribunal Act 2010, a very, very, very important act. So what is your National Green Tribunal Act? You know, all matters with respect to consumers, where do they go? Where do the matters respect to consumers go?
Consumer court.
Consumer court. Your matters with respect to family matters?
Family court.
Family court. Same way, matters with respect to environmental related issues. Environmental related issues, where would they go? It would go in this
NGT.
National Green Tribunal. So this tribunal is a quasi court. It is a quasi judicial body. When I say quasi means what? It is a partly judicial, means it has all the powers of a civil court, But civil court can take up any kind of matters. Can they take up any kind of matters? No. So when these quasi judicial bodies are restricted, their power to administer justice or to deliver judgments are only to certain specific matters, like your environmental related matters. So these are courts. Okay, these are courts for environmental, to resolve disputes with respect to environmental related issues. And these courts, while passing their judgments, also make certain principles. They lay down certain principles. One of this example is polluters pay principle. That means if you are found polluting the environment beyond the limit, and you should pay compensation. Okay, so National Green Tribunal Act is there. I'll give you a very, very good example for this polluters pay principle. Now, there was certain Delhi NCPR region became one of the most polluted places, cities or states, you could say, in the world. So what happened is, they started saying they need to do something. So the Delhi government put up something called as, for diesel cars, they put a cess called as a green tax. You want to sell your cars, you want to sell diesel cars above a certain limit, so then you do that, but you also have to pay a certain tax. So can I say this is in line with the polluters pay principle? Yes or no? Because what is happening, if you want diesel cars which generally polluted, then you better pay also for it. So it was upheld. So if you just see your green tax on diesel cars. So can you see this green tax? So the central government has approved the proposal of a green tax on which they are considered polluting the environment. So this will be there. Even for cars which are a certain older cars, will have to pay, because since they will damage more, they will have to pay a little more. Are we clear with this? So this tribunal is there which will actually adjudicate disputes with respect to, suppose the owners are saying that we are not responsible, or there are more claimants coming in case of death, then who the compensation to be given. So all the environmental related disputes are decided by this tribunal. You can read it off, this is important. And objectives of the National Green Tribunal Act is, it is to provide establishment of this act, of this tribunal, who would expeditiously dispose of cases with respect to environment and forest protection. Okay. Enforcing all legal rights of the people. For example, if there is a person who has got damage and wants compensation, he can approach your also account for compensation and relief to the persons affected of themselves or their property. Power of the tribunal. So if you go to see, they have powers of all the civil courts. They can summon anyone, enforce anyone, etc. They have all the powers as similar to a civil court. Any person who has sustained an injury can file a case in the National Green Tribunal. If a person is not satisfied with the tribunal, he can go up to the appeal to the Supreme Court. But this appeal is to be made within 90 days of the order passed by the National Green Tribunal. Now, checklist for compliances, just general stuff, you can read it. Waste management, whether you are complying with all the laws. Water management, air emissions, contamination. Headings, you can just read it up. Transport and energy consumption. Okay. So if I just take you through the National Green Tribunal, you see they have become so serious about about environment, that the National Green Tribunal is continuously fining people, and Green Tribunal imposes 10 lakh rupees fine, is imposing a 500 crore rupee fine, or slaps rupees 10 crores on a pharma company, imposes 100 crore penalty, 1 crore on Grasim. Can you see this? So they are continuously filing. So nowadays, this who really ensures that the laws are followed is a National Green Tribunal. It's your court, and in case if you are found violating any of the environmental laws or have caused damage to anyone, the National Green Tribunal can levy heavy penalties on you. And that is it. We are done with the chapter. Sure. Any doubts, anyone?